There is a distinct phase in every operator's development when he observes the charts, the very same charts that once appeared as a jumble of meaningless figures, and suddenly the noise seems to recede. The uproar of the tape begins to speak in a measured tone. The randomness starts to reveal its logic. You cannot pinpoint the exact moment it occurred, but a fundamental shift has taken place within you. This is the turning point that the vast majority of traders never experience. It isn't defined by a colossal gain or a flawless entry. It is defined by stillness. The quiet understanding that you are no longer operating like the uninformed public. You are starting to reason, to act, and to perceive like the minority who endure. I have witnessed this cycle repeatedly. Traders who are driven by hope act on fear and ultimately exhaust their capital and their spirit. Then one day something aligns. Their market operations cease to be emotional and become methodical. Their attention moves from pursuing quick gains to mastering their own conduct. That is the moment you know you are finally making the transition. You are becoming a consistently profitable operator, and that is what we are here to examine. 5 subtle indications that you are at last on that path. These signs will not appear in your ledger first. They will manifest in your thinking, your procedures, and your response to the market's own action. The first indication is this: you no longer operate for the thrill. You operate for the objective. When I began, I perceived trading as a field of constant action. I was convinced that the more I did, the faster my account would grow. Every tick on the tape was a challenge, every price bar a demand for a decision. But I was mistaken, because the market does not reward frantic activity. It rewards sound judgment and patience. The moment you cease to feel that incessant need to be in the market, to buy, to sell, to avoid missing a minor fluctuation, that is when you start to comprehend the true nature of this business. It is not a contest of speed. It is a contest of waiting. You begin to consult your charts less frequently. You no longer fixate on every tick. You find yourself in a state of calm, not because the market is quiet, but because you are. That is the internal shift that separates the operator who chases from the operator who builds. As a great contemporary of mine once said, it was never his thinking that made the big money for him. It was always his sitting. And that wasn't about idleness, it was about self-control. Control over your impulses, your anxieties, and your greed. You stop trying to outguess the market and start learning to wait for it to reveal its hand. That is the discipline of remaining still while the rest of the world scrambles for an entry. The second sign you're becoming a profitable operator is that your perspective on losses transforms. A loss no longer carries the same emotional weight. It no longer threatens your sense of self. You stop taking it personally because you finally grasp that a loss is not a failure. It is simply information. Every losing trade teaches you something about your analysis, your timing, or your discipline. And that lesson is far more valuable than any single gain. In my formative years, one trade in the red would disrupt my entire day. I would desperately try to win the money back on the next trade. But the market is indifferent to your feelings. It only responds to supply and demand. So I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And started asking, did I follow my method? That is the change in thinking that forges consistency. When your standard for success becomes proper execution rather than the immediate outcome, you become resilient. Because no individual trade can break you when your identity is not linked to its result. To truly internalize these concepts, the serious man must return to the source. The foundation of modern technical analysis is contained within Richard Wyckoff's masterpiece, How I Trade and Invest in Stocks and Bonds. This is the original, timeless wisdom presented in the annotated edition by Max Davidson. The annotations provide necessary context and clarity for the modern environment, ensuring the original principles of trading as a serious business, risk management, and judging the market by its own action are preserved. The link to this book is in the description below. Every profitable operator I have ever known reached this stage. They stopped aiming for perfection and started aiming for presence. That is the key. If you are listening now and observing that your own reactions are calmer, your patience is greater, and your focus is more defined, that is not a coincidence. That is your evolution. You are beginning to operate with method, not emotion. The third sign is subtle but profound. You begin to rely on your own trained judgment. Early on, traders bounce from one system to the next. They question every analysis. They hesitate on every setup. But over time, after sufficient study, review, and painful tuition paid to the market, you begin to hear your own analytical voice again. Not an emotional whim, but a trained judgment. You've seen the market's maneuvers enough times that you no longer fall for the simple traps set by the composite man. You start to follow your own method even when it is dull, even when it is slow. Because you have learned the truth. Methodical trading is profitable trading. That's how you know you're getting closer. When the excitement subsides and objectivity takes its place. When your best trades feel logical, not lucky. When your peace of mind becomes more important than a fleeting profit. That is when you are becoming a true market operator. Because the truth is, the market examines everyone. It examines your ego, your patience, your character. And most people fail not from a lack of knowledge, but from a lack of self-control. So when you find yourself becoming quieter, more disciplined, less reactive, acknowledge it. It is a sign of progress that most traders will never achieve. Before we proceed, I want to ask for your thoughts. We have gathered a community of operators who seek to grow, to think more deeply, and who refuse to be shaken out. So tell us in the comments, what do you value most in these discussions? What is the one insight that has helped you the most? And what is the single greatest obstacle you are facing in your trading journey right now? Your answers help determine the lessons we prepare next. Because this is not just my story, it is yours as well. And if this message resonates with you, if you recognize yourself in these words, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and explore the other studies on this channel. They will help you delve even deeper into the mindset that is shaping real operators. Because this journey is not about one lesson or one sign, it is a process. And we are only just beginning. You know you are changing when you stop waking up to chase a move and start waking up to protect your capital. That is the fourth sign. It is not as exhilarating as catching a major markup, but it is the bedrock of all lasting success. You begin to understand that not every day must be profitable, but every day must be productive in its analysis. Some days you profit, some days you wait, some days you simply observe. And on those quiet days, you realize something essential, that waiting is also a position. The amateur detests stillness. He believes the market owes him action. But the professional, the one who has weathered every type of market, knows that stillness is the sound of a cause being built. He does not force an entry. He does not chase a reaction. He prepares for the effect. That is what discipline looks like when it matures. It becomes calm. You no longer argue with the tape. You no longer try to impose your will on the market. You simply respond when the time is right and remain on the sidelines when it is not. I remember the years I thought discipline was about restriction, forcing myself not to trade, suppressing my judgment, fighting my every impulse. But true discipline is not restriction. It is alignment. It is when your mind, your method, and your patience move in a single, quiet rhythm with the market's own story. That is the kind of discipline that ensures longevity. It is not something you learn in a day. It is something you become. You start to notice you are not mentally exhausted anymore. You are no longer drained after a market session. You do not feel the urge to check your profit and loss after every single trade. You realize your self-worth is not tied to your equity curve. That is when you know you are starting to operate from a place of peace, not pressure. And from that peace comes clarity. That clarity leads to the fifth sign, one of the most understated but powerful indicators of all. You start to think in probabilities, not certainties. This is the mindset that divides the gambler from the professional operator. The gambler sees every trade as a win-or-lose proposition. The professional sees every trade as just one event in a long series that over time will express his edge. When I was younger, I wanted to be correct on every position. I wanted to forecast the next major move, to pick the absolute top and bottom. But with experience, I learned that the objective is not to be right. It is to make sound, calculated commitments over and over again. The market does not reward the ego, it rewards consistency. When you begin to think in terms of probabilities, you stop caring about being right on any single trade and start focusing on operating correctly. You follow your plan, you take the valid setups, you manage your risk, and you trust the mathematical expectation over the emotion of the moment. You start to say things like, "The trade failed to work out, but the analysis was sound." That sentence alone is a mark of maturity because it means your process is more important than your pride. It's curious. People often ask me what separates the professionals from the rest. They expect a secret formula, a hidden indicator, a room where the composite man plans his campaigns. But the truth is, the difference is not external, it is internal. It is the ability to detach from the outcome, to focus on execution, to remain consistent even when results fluctuate. When you think in probabilities, you stop overreacting. You stop cutting your profitable trades short out of fear. You stop adding to losing positions out of hope. You become a student of your own system. You stop gambling with emotion and start operating with logic. That is when trading becomes a quiet profession. You realize that consistency is not built on intensity. It is built on repetition. Doing the correct thing repeatedly without needing immediate validation that it is working. And that is what most traders cannot endure. The delay. They require instant feedback. But the professional accepts the delay between discipline and reward. That is where real profitability is cultivated. If you have reached that stage where you can take a loss and remain calm, where you can let a setup pass without frustration, where you can follow your plan even when it feels uncomfortable, then understand this. You are already living in the mindset that most traders never find. You are no longer chasing profits. You are becoming the kind of person who is prepared to receive them. Because the market remunerates those who can wait. It pays those who can endure uncertainty without losing composure. It pays those who can adhere to their edge through boredom, through doubt, and through fear. That is mastery. And that mastery does not announce its arrival. It does not appear with fanfare or fortune. It appears in the quiet confidence you feel when a trade is moving in your favor and you are not tempted to interfere, in the patience you maintain when the market is dull and you are not forcing the issue, in the assurance you build when your plan finally feels like second nature. That is when you know the market has ceased to be your adversary and has become your reflection. It reflects your discipline, your patience, your maturity. It shows you who you have become and who you still need to be. And once you see that, you will never operate the same way again. You will stop searching for the next secret and start refining the method you have already chosen. You will stop comparing your progress to others and start mastering your own rhythm. You will stop fearing the market and start respecting its action. That is when trading stops being a chaotic struggle and becomes a craft. And if this video is speaking to you, if it's helping you see the market in a new light, take a second to like this video. Share it with someone who needs it. The next part will take us into the deeper lessons that reveal why these signs appear and what they mean for your long-term success. There comes a point in every operator's journey when he begins to realize something unsettling. You are no longer just studying the market. The market is studying you. It observes your habits, your fears, your impatience. It knows when you are prone to chase. It knows when you are likely to flinch. And when it recognizes that you have stopped reacting, when it senses that your emotions no longer give you away, that is when it finally begins to reward your efforts. That is the invisible transition that defines a profitable operator. The market itself has not changed. You have. You have learned to master the one thing most people cannot even identify: yourself. And that brings us to one of the rarest signs of all: the moment when you begin to value time more than trades. In the beginning, time feels like your enemy. Every hour you are not in a position feels wasted. Every moment the market moves without you feels like a personal slight. But the seasoned operator knows time is not his enemy. It is his greatest asset. Profitable operators think in campaigns, not ticks. They stop trying to make money every single day and start trying to protect and grow their capital over the course of a year. They understand that success in this business is not built from one great maneuver. It is built from surviving 1,000 small errors without catastrophic loss. You start planning your trades like a master craftsman plans his work. Slowly, deliberately, with a deep respect for detail. You know exactly what conditions you are looking for, and you are willing to wait as long as it takes for them to appear. That is not passivity. That is precision. The amateurs think you are idle when you are on the sidelines, but the professionals know that being on the sidelines is a trade. That is how you preserve the capital and mental energy for the moment that truly counts. When I reached that point, I noticed something remarkable. My life outside the market began to change too. I stopped rushing. I stopped trying to force outcomes. I started to trust the process of patience in everything, not just in my market operations. Because trading, at its core, is a mirror of one's character. The discipline you build at the chart reflects in every decision you make away from it. You see, becoming a profitable operator is not about learning new strategies. It is about building a new identity. You are not trying to find signals on a chart. You are trying to become the kind of person who can follow them with unwavering discipline. The charts are the same for everyone. What changes is the mind that is interpreting them. That is why I have always maintained that an operator's edge is not in the market. It is in his own mind. You can give two people the exact same method, the same risk management rules, the same tools. One will build wealth. The other will deplete his account. The difference is not in their logic. It is in their emotional fortitude. The ability to remain objective while the world around you is in turmoil. And if you have reached a point where you can sit through drawdowns without panicking, where you can endure periods of inactivity without forcing trades, where you can accept uncertainty without frustration, then congratulations. You are beginning to live what most only theorize about. You are thinking like a professional. You are becoming someone who does not need the market for validation because you already trust your process. There is another powerful sign, and this one is often missed. You start to simplify everything. In your early years, you collect indicators like they are trophies. You clutter your charts with signals, moving averages, oscillators, hoping that more data will give you more control. But as you evolve, you begin to remove it all. You start to realize that the market is not complicated. Your thinking was. You trade fewer setups. You hold for larger objectives. You wait for clearer evidence of accumulation or distribution. And that simplicity feels like liberation. That is the final evolution every operator goes through, from noise to clarity. You begin to understand that less is not just more. Less is profitable. When your workspace becomes cleaner, your thoughts become clearer. Your trading plan becomes sharper. Your rules become absolute. And you finally feel in control. Not because you control the market, but because you control yourself within it. That is the real victory. It is not about how much you make. It is about how little you now need to operate recklessly. You have detached from the obsession with more. More trades, more screens, more signals. Now you crave only better setups, better risk management, better mental discipline. That shift from quantity to quality is the mark of every seasoned professional I have ever met. But let me offer a word of caution. When you reach this level, complacency becomes the next great trap. Because comfort can be dangerous. The moment you feel invincible, the market will find a way to remind you that you are not. That is why humility must always accompany mastery. I learned that lesson through painful experience. The same confidence that builds fortunes can also destroy them if it is not tempered with respect for the market. You must keep questioning, keep journaling, keep learning even when you are winning, especially when you are winning. The greatest operators do not fear losses, they fear arrogance. Because arrogance will blind you faster than any drawdown ever will. So, if you have been seeing progress lately, if your charts look cleaner, your decisions calmer, your results steadier, remember to remain a student. Keep your curiosity alive. The market is generous, but only to those who remain its students forever. This is why I tell operators that success is not a destination. It is a state of constant maintenance. It is a lifelong balancing act between confidence and caution. And when you finally find that rhythm, that delicate harmony between boldness and restraint, you begin to feel something few ever experience. Peace. Peace with your process. Peace with your pace. Peace with your journey. That is when you are no longer chasing the market. You are flowing with it. And that flow, that effortless focus, is the signature of every profitable trader. Before we conclude, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what stage are you in right now? Which of these signs have you begun to see in yourself? And what do you still struggle with? Your honesty helps this community grow because every comment, every story, reminds another trader they are not alone. And if this part resonated with you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. The journey isn't over because in the final part, we'll go deeper into what happens after you become consistent. The quiet challenges that follow success and how to stay profitable when the world finally starts believing you are. When consistency finally arrives, it does not feel the way you imagined. It does not come with fireworks or wild celebration. It comes quietly, almost without you noticing. You wake up one day and realize you no longer think primarily about making money. You think about managing risk and executing your plan. That is when you know you have crossed the invisible line, the line between the amateur and the professional. But here is the part nobody discusses. After consistency comes a new challenge, sustainability. Because staying profitable is in many ways more difficult than becoming profitable. The same patience and humility that built your foundation must now be used to protect it. At this stage, the greatest danger is not a market loss. It is comfort. When you start to win with regularity, when your confidence is high, that is when the old voice of greed tries to make its return, whispering, "You've figured it out." You can take on more risk now. You can bend the rules just this once. That voice is subtle, but it is destructive. It is the same voice that has toppled empires and ended careers. Because the moment you stop respecting the market will remind you of its power. I have seen operators make millions and lose it all in a matter of months, not because they forgot how to trade, but because they forgot the discipline that made them successful in the first place. They abandoned the patience that built their success, chasing the same thrill they thought they had outgrown. And that is where your final test truly begins, when you can win and still remain humble. When you can see your account grow and still remain grounded. When you can teach others without ever believing you have learned everything. That is when you become truly formidable. Because true profitability is not measured by the size of your account. It is measured by the strength of your discipline. You begin to see your trading as a direct reflection of your own mind. If your thoughts are chaotic, your results will be chaotic. If your thoughts are orderly, your results will align. And suddenly, every trading session becomes a form of practice, not on price action, but on your own patience. This is where trading transcends the pursuit of money. It becomes a craft, a mirror, a way of living with heightened awareness. You stop seeing charts as just lines and numbers. You start seeing them as the recorded behavior of crowds, the interplay of emotion, the rhythm of supply and demand. You see the panic in the long red bars, the greed in the green, the fear in the periods of indecision. And in that recognition you gain a unique power, not to control the market, but to control your response to it. That is what separates the elite from the average. The average trader wants to predict what will happen next. The elite operator focuses on how he will respond when it does. That is mastery. You know you have reached it when you start to value boredom. When the quiet, uneventful days no longer frustrate you, they reassure you. Because you know that boredom is the workshop where consistency is forged. That is when trading stops feeling like a test and starts feeling like a state of balance. You will begin to notice that your entire life feels different. You will stop rushing decisions, stop reacting emotionally, and stop seeking external validation. You will think more slowly. You will feel more centered. Because the same patience that made you a profitable trader will make you a more composed human being. That is the hidden reward that no one talks about. Trading teaches you more about life than it does about markets. It teaches you detachment, humility, patience, and a deep respect for uncertainty. And when you learn those lessons, you start to live with more intention, both on and off the charts. It took me years to understand this. I pursued every method, every signal, every supposed secret edge. But in the end, all the market ever demanded of me was mastery of myself. When I finally stopped fighting the market and started to simply read its story, that is when everything changed. And now, if you are here listening, learning, and reflecting, then you are already on that same path. You have begun to transform in ways that most traders never will, because most never get past the noise. But you are starting to hear the rhythm behind it. So remember these 5 signs, not as goals to be chased, but as reflections of your own growth. When you trade for clarity instead of excitement. When you stop letting losses define you. When you trust your own trained judgment and follow your plan. When you think in probabilities, not predictions. And when you find peace in patience instead of a thrill in action. That is when you are becoming a profitable trader. Not someday, not soon, but now. Because profit is not a number. It is a mindset. It is the maturity to handle both gain and loss with the same calm spirit. It is the awareness to know that your job is not to predict the market, but to participate in it with discipline. That is what the great operators of the past learned, often through great hardship. And that is what I hope every trader today can learn through listening, reflecting, and applying. So before we close, I want to ask you something. We have built a space here for operators who think more deeply, who see trading as a profession, not a gamble. Tell us in the comments below, what do you value most about these discussions? What spoke to you the most in this particular lesson? And what is the biggest challenge you are facing right now in your trading? Be honest. Your story could help someone who is still in the storm you just passed through. That is how this community grows, not through numbers, but through shared wisdom. And if this message struck a chord, if it made you pause, reflect, or see your trading differently, take a second to like this video. Share it with an operator who needs it, and check out my other studies on this channel. Each one connects to this lesson because they all lead to the same truth. The greatest trade you will ever make is not on the tape. It is within yourself. The moment you master your mind, the market becomes a clear reflection of your process. And when that happens, profitability becomes the natural outcome. Not because you chase it, but because you have become the kind of operator who is prepared to manage it.